Meet Bill. Bill is enjoying the evening in his Mojave homestead. It's a wooden shack with not much to it, but it's his own little slice of the world. He mainly works for the sharecropper farms nearby, but he'll also work an odd job here and there for the Crimson Caravan or the Gunrunners. He's even recently met a girl named Jenny who also works at the sharecropper farms. He's beginning to think that in this harsh world, there's an actual future in front of him. You see, Bill grew up rough in the LA Boneyard in NCR territory. He lost his parents at such a young age that he can't even remember their faces, and nothing was holding him down to that place, so he decided to make his way out to New Vegas and start fresh. Everything seemed to be going to plan. Bill believes one day he'll even have children of his own and be able to give them a life he never thought possible in the wasteland. Day by day, this world seemed like less of a wasteland and more of a new beginning for him. Feeling full of that hope and motivation, Bill got home from a long day's work at the farms today and fixed up one of his old windows and even took the wooden boards off of it so that some sunlight could peek through. Now he's finally gotten the chance to sit down and enjoy a warm cup of coffee. He knows he shouldn't be having caffeine this late, but he can't help but indulge a bit given how good his day went. Nothing could bring him down. He had asked Jenny out and she said yes. They were going to go to the Atomic Wrangler this weekend and see a show. Bill sat there with a big dumb smile on his face in between sips of coffee while he ignored Mr. New Vegas on the radio. He had tuned it out during his daydreaming. Bill didn't notice the radio until it suddenly cut out. Even if he wasn't listening to it, he liked the background noise. It was calming, especially in the eerie desert night. He would often fall asleep with it on. Bill was interrupted from trying to fix his radio when he suddenly heard a knock on his door. At this hour, most other farmers are doing as Bill was, resting in the evening, if not already fast asleep, to prepare for another day of manual labor. Bill wonders, who could this be? I don't get knocks on my door at this hour. Then he realizes, it must be Jenny from the farm. Perhaps she's snuck over and his daydreams are about to become reality. Bill quickly forgets about his radio and rushes over to the door with that same dumb smile on his face. He doesn't want to leave Jenny out in the cold desert night. When he opens up, he's amazed to see that it is her. Jenny is there. He's overjoyed but slightly nervous. But then Bill realizes she's not alone. She's flanked at either side by men in old-world sports gear. Bill's excitement quickly turns into confusion and dread. He can barely make out what's going on as the only light source outside is the blinding neon laser show coming from the strip. He eventually realizes Jenny's mouth is tightly wrapped in cloth and she's attempting to scream in a panic. Bill has no idea that while he's rushed to the door to see who is there and become frozen in disarray, another man in the same sports gear has come through one of his newly fixed windows from behind him and is now planting a machete in his back. On behalf of the New California Republic, nvRanger & Co. has been hired to create an escape plan for all NCR and New Vegas citizens in the unlikely event that Caesar's Legion proves victorious during the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. If the Legion does win the battle, several Ranger teams have been tasked with firing off flare shots into the sky. This is your signal to get out of town. As your friendly neighborhood independent ranger, my job is to help guide you around the area just beyond the borders of New Vegas so that you can understand what route is best for your escape. You are Bill, a barely informed local life form. My job is to turn you from Bill into Chad, a citizen hoping to avoid death. I will be taking Bill, that's you, on a journey around the Mojave so we can look at what's just beyond our reach. There are various cities, towns, different wilderness areas. There's a lot to see out there. In doing this, I will be using old world data provided by the NCR. Oddly enough, this data displays that an entire city is missing from the New Vegas region. That city would be Henderson. The city appears to have been buried under the sands, but we can find a train yard here. Oddly enough, the followers' outpost is set in a train yard, so there are some remnants of Henderson. One of your potential options to escape the area would be using I-11 and Route 93, which eventually merge and cross over the Colorado River into Arizona. Now, it seems that these roads have been merged into or combined with the Hoover Dam access road, which of course crosses the Hoover Dam. Taking this route would be a Bill decision, as you would be running directly at your invaders. Probably not a good idea, but if you were able to make it past them, the Hoover Dam access road does eventually link back up with Route 93 and goes further into Arizona, passing towns such as Dolan Springs and Kingman. You would be nestling yourself deep within enemy territory though. However, Route 93 would eventually take you into one of the largest cities from the old world in Phoenix. Phoenix is of course a major city under the control of Caesar's Legion. Not much else is known of it other than it does likely have something of a population, given we have intelligence on one of the high-ranking officers in the Legion, Aurelius of Phoenix, who was born there. Also under Legion control and just beyond the city of Phoenix is the smaller city of Tucson, which has been aptly named Tucson. This is actually the location where the Legion first found a significant amount of the sports gear that their soldiers use at a local university. Very little is known of Legion territory east of the Colorado, so if you do decide to make this very unique escape attempt, good luck out there. A better decision is to perhaps remain on Highway 95 headed south towards Searchlight. Now you'll have to dodge the issues going on with that town, but make sure you don't go east down Cottonwood Cove Road. If you did decide to employ this poor Bill-like decision making, chances are you would end up as a shit stain on a stink stick. Oddly enough, old world data reveals that this isn't just simply an extension of the Colorado River. When we go a bit south of Cottonwood Cove, we find Lake Mojave. We can say this with a fair amount of confidence, not only by looking at a map, but by also noticing that there are lake lurks down here, and those guys, surprise surprise, tend to hang out near lakes. Now, if you were to follow the Colorado River further south, or if you were to head back towards Searchlight and just go south beyond the airport, you would eventually end up near Laughlin, Nevada, and Bullhead City, Arizona. These are twin cities that sit opposite to one another on either side of the Colorado River. Laughlin and Bullhead are actually much closer to Searchlight and Lake Mojave right next to Cottonwood Cove than either of those locations are to New Vegas. Beyond that, the Bullhead City area actually has quite a history relevant to the NCR. You see, some 30-ish odd years before the NCR ever came into the New Vegas region, their then dictator, President Tandy, passed away and was succeeded by her vice president, Joanna Tibbet. Shortly after Tibbet took office, 38 foolish citizens who we can comfortably refer to as Bills decided they would go off into the desert and take their chances in a new area. That area would be Bullhead City. It seemed like a great opportunity. You would have an old world city that would hopefully have something remaining of its infrastructure sitting right along a large source of water. Unfortunately for those 38 Bills, they would come across this city which was already inhabited by raider tribal types. They were likely something not too dissimilar from the White Legs or the 80s, and they would slaughter all 38 Bills. Joanna Tibbet would make the fatal mistake of doing nothing clear in response to this brutal massacre, and in the eyes of the public, she would become Joanna Timid. She would be removed from office in a vote of no confidence and be replaced by Warhawk Wendell Peterson, who would begin a campaign known as the Pacification of the Mojave. Leading this campaign would be then General Aaron Kimball, and through the process he would become a national hero to the NCR, which would help him gain the presidency down the road. By the year 2270, so 17 years ago, the NCR would completely remove the tribes in the area of Bullhead City, so one would assume it's under their control. This would be a poor assumption, however, as it's known all lands east of the Colorado are under the control of Caesar's legion. Again, to reiterate, Bullhead City sits on the east side of the Colorado, so it's very possible that there's some sort of stalemate going on here where Caesar's legion controls Bullhead City, it would fit given its name, and then Laughlin, Nevada, on the other side of the river is under the control of the NCR. What ends up throwing a monkey wrench into this whole thing is the legion town of Dry Wells, which is down the Colorado River from Cottonwood Cove and Lake Mojave. Now, to break the fourth wall for a moment, there doesn't seem to be any town that would have buildings like this in between Lake Mojave and Laughlin and Bullhead City in real life. I'm sure we're all aware that Fallout takes place on an alternate timeline, so the developers have the creative ability to plug and place locations as they wish, but if you know New Vegas, you know that it really sticks to the real life region pretty closely. So although this is unconfirmed, it is possible, based on location, that Dry Wells is at least a portion of Laughlin, Nevada. The reason I say Laughlin and not Bullhead is because, again, Laughlin is on the Nevada side of the Colorado, and so is Dry Wells. And this would actually make quite a bit of sense given its location relative to Lake Mojave and Searchlight. And if that is the case, it seems that the NCR has not only lost Bullhead City, but also at least a part of Laughlin, Nevada, if not the whole thing. This is further supported by the fact that we do have an old world road here, which would have been the Laughlin Highway. The Laughlin Highway would take you back to Route 95. This is the road that extends south out of Searchlight. We can also see that the road ends abruptly at the Colorado River, and this would have been where the Don Laughlin Bridge is that would take you into Bullhead City. Perhaps the landscape has been severely warped after the Great War because we don't see anything approximating Bullhead City on the other side of the river. This is ultimately all just theory and guesswork, and unfortunately we're unable to actually visit Dry Wells until it is nuked. Regardless, it is interesting to note that just south of Searchlight in the borders of the game world, we can see we have a pretty densely populated region where you have not only Laughlin and Bullhead City, but also Kingman, which we mentioned earlier, Golden Valley, and Lake Havasu City. Unfortunately for you Bills, much of this is going to be Legion territory, if not all of it, so this is not a viable escape route. So as Bill continues on his journey, instead of heading south through Searchlight on Highway 95, perhaps the best decision is to then head west at Searchlight down Joshua Tree Highway, which becomes Nipton Road, of course passing through the town of Nipton. Now within the town of Nipton, there are a set of railroad tracks which you might be tempted to follow, although this may be a poor decision or a Bill decision, as they would take you into the Mojave National Preserve, which is 1.6 million acres of wilderness. Another issue with following these railroad tracks, as we can see, is as they cross over Crescent Canyon, they are destroyed and collapse down into that canyon. As soon as you begin to head south out of Nipton, you technically have already entered the Mojave National Preserve, and we can see this as there is a large stretch of wilderness with wildlife inside. We also have this ominous small plane crash out here. Now, if you were able to somehow successfully navigate this region and stay close to those railroad tracks, they would eventually take you to the town of Barstow, California, which is the Hub. The Hub is a major trading town within NCR. Now, all of my data on it is from the year 2161, over 100 years ago, so it's likely grown into something quite substantial. What's interesting is we can actually see a piece or a couple pieces of Barstow, California within the New Vegas region. To do this, we just have to look at some of the trains in the area and we'll see Barstow right on the side of them. We also know that just before 2287, the NCR had trains in the area at least somewhat operational. This means it's not too unlikely that they were sending trains from the Hub through the Mojave National Preserve into the area via this bridge before it collapsed. For some reason, we don't know how or why it collapsed. It could have been some sort of natural disaster, powder gangers, or maybe even the Legion sabotaged it. But that might not completely ruin this railroad's potential, as there is this inaccessible tunnel, so if we were able to lift the gate, perhaps trains could keep flowing in. As a Bill, you don't need to roam through the wilderness. If you just head a bit further down Nipton Road, you'll eventually find the I-15, which will lead you up to the Mojave outpost. And the I-15 will also take you directly to the the hub. Oddly enough, the Mojave Outpost is roughly the middle point between the hub and New Vegas. If Bill continues to follow the I-15 beyond the hub, it would eventually take you past the Boneyard. The Boneyard is the new name for the old world city of Los Angeles. It's given the name the Boneyard because Los Angeles was decimated during the Great War, although by this point the NCR has likely at least somewhat revived it. It's now become one of 5 states within the NCR, being the state of Los Angeles. If we continue to follow the I-15 not too far beyond the state of Los Angeles, we'll find another state within the NCR, being the state of Dayglow. Dayglow is the remains of the old world city of San Diego. Dayglow actually sits directly along the border between the United States and Mexico, and just beyond that border is the city of Tijuana. Tijuana is in Baja California, where apparently some NCR Rangers are chasing ghosts. Once again, Ranger here breaking the fourth wall. If we head to that additional region of the I-15 that we can visit after nuking it, we can see that we also have large concrete buildings here, things approximating skyscrapers, and a large overpass highway that has been destroyed. Similar to dry wells, it's hard to nail down a real-world location here, but it's very possible this is the town of Baker, California. Baker is quite a small town, but perhaps in Fallout's alternate timeline, it grew into something quite a bit larger. We can see that the I-15 runs through Baker, but beyond that it also has a road running somewhat perpendicular to the I-15, and this is also shown in-game. My assumption is that this is Route 127 or Death Valley Road. This means this large overpass is likely going to take you up into Death Valley, which is the location of the divide. We know that the courier is responsible for the creation of the divide, and if you also make the decision to destroy this stretch of the I-15, you are severely limiting the NCR's ability to expand and grow. The courier can single-handedly begin to make a massive radioactive wall of containment that blocks off the NCR's options. They'll either have to go north through Reno, Nevada, or into Oregon, or face the Legion head-on in Phoenix, Arizona. From this ground zero location on the I-15, we can actually still see the statues at the Mojave Outpost. So based on the old world data, some might be thinking Baker seems quite far away from the Mojave Outpost, but we have to remember that New Vegas uses real-world geological survey data and then shrinks it down. So what is actually miles and miles of highway is really just a couple-minute walk to make this thing playable. Baker, California is probably quite a bit closer to the Mojave Outpost than even is the New Vegas Strip. Alright, enough about that, Bill. Remember, we gotta focus up. This is an escape plan. Perhaps you're a Bill that is way too far away from the Mojave Outpost. You can't make that run in time, but you're a bit closer to Goodsprings and you head down Goodsprings Road. We can see a road that runs through Goodsprings and eventually passes the old schoolhouse and just sort of abruptly ends. Somewhere up in those hills, this road should continue where it would be Sandy Valley Road based on our old world data. Sandy Valley Road would eventually take you, unsurprisingly, to the town of Sandy Valley. So somewhere just on the other side of the mountains that surround Goodsprings is another town. Sandy Valley is actually quite a bit larger than Goodsprings in not only area but pre-war population. The sad reality for Sandy Valley is it's likely within the scope of the divide. We can enter the divide just southwest of the town of Primm, and just on the other side of the canyon wreckage, the divide begins. We also note that within the divide is the town of Ashton, and Ashton is not within Death Valley. This means that the divide expands beyond the scope of Death Valley. Ashton is not only on the Nevada side of the border, but it also is lined up along that border with Sandy Valley, so it's very possible that Sandy Valley is also within the divide. This isn't absolute though, so who knows, perhaps you can find this long-lost little desert community out in its own little pocket of paradise. Now, if we follow Red Rock Canyon Road south, which of course is going to pass Red Rock Canyon along with Spring Mountain Ranch State Park and Bonnie Springs, we should have another road leaving the area, and this would be the Pahrump Valley Highway. Now, it seems in the aftermath of the Great War, we have lost data on the Pahrump Valley Highway because all we can see here is a road that connects Red Rock Canyon Road directly into Goodsprings. Somewhere off in the hills here is the Pahrump Valley Highway that will take you to the town of Pahrump. This is quite a large town which is just behind Mount Charleston where Jacobstown is, but unfortunately it sits directly in between Ashton and Sandy Valley, meaning it is greatly at risk for being within the divide. So unfortunately, as a Bill looking to escape the New Vegas region, heading down either of these roads can be quite risky. You might be running directly into a dead end. For any Bills looking to escape Westside during the invasion, you have a couple of options nearby. You'll first have to head up Interstate 11 and you'll eventually find yourself at an intersection. One option you have will be Route 157 Kyle Canyon Road that will take you up into Mount Charleston and Jacobstown. If you go this way, you may be able to get refuge with the super mutants and nightkin that inhabit an old ski lodge up there, but they may turn you away if there's a large influx of people and they aren't able to sustain a massive population increase. If that's the case, you will have to continue up Highway 95. Not long after, you would eventually run into the small town of Indian Springs, but if you were to proceed beyond that, you would run into a major issue as Highway 95 runs directly next to the town of Ashton, the one that is well within the divide. As an aspiring Chad, I hope you're beginning to notice a trend here. We're running into the divide a lot if we go west. Now, if you're able to somehow circumvent the divide and end up back on Route 95, you would find your way eventually to the town of New Reno. As a New Vegas local, you would likely find yourself right at home in New Reno. You have gambling, crime, and even its very own West Side here. You would even find a familiar company in the Van Graffs. Unfortunately, it would be an enormous and dangerous journey to make it from New Vegas to Reno, not to mention the fact that the 80s tribe isn't too far away with Interstate 80 running directly into Reno. Alright, Bill, so here's another fourth wall side note I have to make as we make our journey around the New Vegas region. If we make our way up here to the northwest corner of the map, not too far from the Horowitz farmstead, and you have the Wild Wasteland perk enabled, you will find aliens up here. Now, we have seen aliens before in Fallout, of course, with Mothership Zeta, and even in Fallout 4, but I think the placement of these guys is a bit more specific. These aliens could have been placed anywhere, but they were particularly put in this northwestern corner just before you would end up roaming into the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. More importantly, if we were to draw a line from the center of Vegas through to where these aliens were and continue to extend out that line, we would eventually hit Area 51. Allegedly. I'm not trying to get on a government watch list, I'm just trying to point out the fact that I think these aliens were put here in reference to Area 51 because that location is so close to Vegas, but wasn't actually included within our playable space. Now, for the Bills of North Vegas and even those within Nellis, your best bet is likely going to be following Interstate 15, but this time northeast out of Vegas. We can see that by this point, Interstate 15 has become a large highway overpass, which you may not be able to walk across due to it being destroyed at certain points, but perhaps you can walk under it, which will help shade you from the desert sun. Once you exited the Vegas area, you would run into small towns such as Moapa or Mesquite, but you would eventually find your way quite close to Zion National Park. The issue here is not much is known of Utah other than the fact that Caesar's Legion controls at least a portion of it, and other portions are controlled by brutal raider types such as the Whitelegs or the 80s. There seems to be an ongoing tribal war within Zion Valley, so you might think, okay, well, I'll continue north up I-15, and you'd eventually run into Provo, Utah, along with Salt Lake City and Ogden. Salt Lake City was badly ravaged by the Great War, but it's been some time since then. A new community known as New Canaan was actually rebuilding here out of the ruins of Ogden, Utah, which is just a bit north of Salt Lake City. Unfortunately for Bill, notice I'm saying unfortunately a lot, but that's sort of how this goes, New Canaan was destroyed by the Whitelegs, so there is no refuge here. But the Whitelegs aren't even the more present issue here. You see, the Whitelegs are trying to become absolved by Caesar's Legion because they are running from the real threat the 80s. It seemed for a short time at least that Ogden and the greater Salt Lake region were going to become the home of a new empire in New Canaan, but unfortunately this has all been undone. So Bill, the last option I have for you would be East Lake Mead Boulevard, which eventually connects to the North Shore Road. This road runs north of Lake Mead and passes Bitter Springs. It seems that this road has been lost to time, as all we can find out here is the Devil's Throat and an undetonated nuclear bomb known as the One. Now, to break the fourth wall again, we have another interesting situation. The Devil's Throat is a real-life location, and we can see a Devil's Throat sitting right here at the edge of the map. The strange part is the real-life Devil's Throat is on the other side of Lake Mead, and it actually does exist in-game. This is well beyond the playable area, but we can find something approximating the actual placement of the Devil's Throat, and it's in this unrendered, strange area where clearly nothing was done to make this look like part of the playable space, except there is a bit of detail put into this unused version of the Devil's Throat. So the only option as a citizen hoping to avoid death in evacuating the New Vegas region would be to leave through the Mojave Outpost down the I-15. This means that, as the courier, if you decide to nuke this portion of the I-15 at the end of Lonesome Road, you would be closing in all of the refugees, the NCR and New Vegas citizens that would be needing to escape the New Vegas region if the Legion wins the second battle at Hoover Dam. It's often noted that you'd be cutting off NCR supply lines into the New Vegas region from their home country, but you'd also be trapping everyone and creating a fish in a barrel-like scenario for the Legion. So the results of our assessment show that for you Bills, this is your best and perhaps only viable escape route. What's interesting about these roads isn't just that they're visual set pieces that trail off the end of the map. They are a major part of New Vegas's storytelling. They are one of the major unsung heroes of what New Vegas does so well. We can all talk about the interesting quest lines, characters, RPG elements, and all of that stuff is great and a major reason why people like this game, but I think something that often goes unnoticed are the roads and the discussions as to where they lead. It's not just a matter of looking on a real-world map and seeing where these roads go, and then we can infer, okay, well, Phoenix and Los Angeles and Salt Lake City are all kind of around Las Vegas. There's more to it than that, because within game, these locations are mentioned. When we look back west through the Mojave Outpost, we're looking towards the locations from the original Fallout. That's the hub, the boneyard, Dayglow, and so on. If you follow the I-15 in the opposite direction, just northeast of Nellis, it will take you into Utah and near Zion National Park, which is where the Honest Hearts DLC takes place. So this road is taking you to an extended area that you get to visit in-game. 95 northwest by Mount Charleston is going to take you eventually to New Reno, which is a setting from Fallout 2, so again, we're looking back. And again, in the opposite direction, following 95 south out of Searchlight is going to take you near Bullhead City, which there has been established lore built around for New Vegas. And then if you follow the road east across the Hoover Dam, you're going into Legion territory, where you'd eventually find cities like Flagstaff, which is the Legion's capital, and then you have Phoenix and Tucson, which have small bits of lore put around them to build up the greater story of the Legion. So I hope you're noticing the trend here. If you follow the roads that literally leave the game world and often extend just a bit into the distance, of course, you're not going to find much of anything out there. But within the story, they actually lead to places which have either been in previous Fallout games or have intentionally had new writings and lore built around them. New Vegas intentionally took the time to build up the world around it. You can't go visit any of these locations within this game, and many of them you can't visit in any game, but they're still put within the writings and still made relevant, and this isn't for no reason. It's building up the world and exciting your imagination. I guarantee many of you who are watching this who have played New Vegas have gotten to at least just the Mojave Outpost looked out the other side of that gate, saw the couple of buildings that you can't actually reach, and wondered what is out there, even though you know there's no reason for anything to actually be out there. Why would the developers be wasting resources building things you can't visit? But you still have your imagination excited and titillated to the point that you're looking out this gate wondering what could be out there. And then the game continues to play on this within actual moments of narrative, with certain characters discussing, out back west, back in NCR territory, mentioning the boneyard and the hub. And slowly but surely you begin to put the pieces together and realize how far this world actually expands in the limited portion of it you get to experience. New Vegas isn't the only instance of this kind of world building that exists, of course, but it's one of the few video games that takes advantage of these mechanisms. They don't have to directly show you or give you extreme intricate detail on all of them. Just the pure mention of them within this universe excites the imagination and has each individual player begin building up ideas as to what these places are like. They mention a place like the Hub from the original Fallout title, and those who have played it think back and go, I wonder how that place has grown over the past 100 years. I saw it when it was just this fledgling little trading hub, and now it's probably grown into a city of its own within the NCR. Then you hear of a place that we haven't seen, such as Flagstaff or Phoenix within Legion territory, and you begin wondering, what's it like where they live? What's it like in the society that they have created? I actually found a section within a book that I am currently reading to try and get better at making YouTube videos that touches exactly on this. The name of that book is The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr. He says, the brain's propensity for automatic model making is exploited with superb effect by tellers of fantasy and science fiction stories. Simply naming a planet, ancient war, or obscure technical detail seems to trigger the neural process of building it as if it actually exists. So this is what's happening upon the mention of those far and away locations. Or even just looking off down the roads that extend beyond the map and wondering what could be out there. Will continues, one of the first books I fell in love with as a boy was J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. My best friend Oliver and I obsessed over the maps it contained. Mount Gundabad, Desolation of Smog, West lies Mirkwood the Great, there are spiders. When his father made photocopies of them for us, these maps became the focus of a summer of blissful play. He also mentions in Star Wars when Han Solo boasts that his ship, the Millennium Falcon, made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, we have the strange experience of knowing it's an actor doing gibberish, whilst simultaneously somehow feeling as if it's real. The line works because of its absolute specificity and its adherence to what sounds like the truth. The Kessel Run really could be a smuggling route, while parsecs are a genuine measurement of distance equivalent to 3.26 light years. As ridiculous as some of this language is, rather than taking us out of the storyteller's fictional hallucination, it gives it even more density. By merest suggestion, the Kessel Run becomes real. We can imagine the dusty planet on which the route begins, hear the whine and blasts of the engines, feel the hustle and violence of the piss-stinking smugglers' haunts. Exactly what Will is tapping into here, what he's discussing, is exactly why the roads that lead just beyond New Vegas's map are so exciting, why they capture the imagination, and why I'm sure many of us have looked down one, if not many of them, and wondered and thought about what else is there to this world. This is one of the major reasons, if not the most relevant reason, as to why I think so many people obsess over this Fallout game in particular, play it until this day, mod it until this day, and why Season 2 of the Fallout television show is taking place in this area. Of course, the game itself has to be exceptional, and there's plenty of substance within this 15-year-old buggy mess, but what keeps people coming back and what keeps a lot of interest around this world that was created are the carrots that get dangled off in the distance down each one of these roads. We can even see this reflected within the modding community. The Frontier, which I know was a calamitous mess, was set in Portland, Oregon. This is just north of NCR territory and north of where Fallout 2 took place. Then you have the giant project of Nova, Arizona, which just extends the base New Vegas map into Arizona and shows a whole bunch of Legion territory. One of my personal favorites is the Dry Wells expansion mod by Toxic Whiteout and his team, which recreates the location of Dry Wells, but this time you get to see it before it gets nuked or without actually having to nuke it. That team is currently working on doing the same thing for the Long 15, so you can go experience some NCR territory with, again, not having to nuke it. This is why there is such a large portion of the fan base that wants more Fallout in the style that New Vegas gave us. And don't get me wrong, I would also love to see this, but I think the tragic reality is that actually going to these locations, especially if they didn't match your expectations, would ultimately just end in disappointment. The fun part is getting to imagine what's out there, but as soon as the developers go and give their depiction of what these areas look like, your imagination is removed from the equation. Now you can see what it looks like, and that might be great, that might be terrible, but regardless, you're not imagining it anymore. It's right there. The only way to keep the ball rolling would be to create an equally interesting world with an equally interesting surrounding set of locations that we've either seen before and time has passed, or locations that we haven't been to yet. To recapture the lightning in a bottle that was New Vegas, it's not just about the substance of whatever that game is, but also about expanding the world beyond what the eye can see and leaving more roads for players to look down and wonder, what else is out there? What the hell am I talking about? Look, Bill, this has been fun and all, but I have to get this escape plan back to the NCR so I can get paid. Good luck on the road. I'll see you out there.